Okay, so have you ever like totally blanked on someone's name?
Oh, yeah.
Like you know them, you just can't remember their name.
Oh, all the time.
Right, like and it's so awkward. So we wanted to deep dive into that.
For sure.
And one of our listeners sent us this transcript from English Pod 101.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, their first episode on YouTube, and the whole thing's about what to do when you forget someone's name.
It's such a classic situation, right?
I know. And I think what's interesting is this video doesn't just point out the problem, but it actually gives you solutions like right in the dialogue itself.
Yeah, it's like built in.
Exactly. So let's jump in.
Sounds good.
So the video, there's a conversation between two people, Nick and Anna,
Okay.
and they're reconnecting after some kind of conference, but Nick, you can tell he's struggling
Oh, no.
to remember Anna's name.
That's the worst.
I know. But I feel like the way he handles it is actually really good. Like he sounds natural,
Yeah,
even though he's obviously like panicking inside.
right.
He uses that phrase, I'm in a bit of a hurry,
Okay.
which it lets him kind of excuse himself,
Yeah.
but it doesn't sound like rude.
It keeps things moving. Yeah.
Exactly. So what are some other like strategies that they use in the video for this kind of thing?
So one of the things they do is suggest this euphemism like, it slipped my mind.
Oh, yeah,
And that's like a softer way of saying you forgot something.
it is. Way better than just being like, I forgot your name.
I think euphemisms in general are super useful, especially like in social situations.
Totally. It's less embarrassing.
Exactly. It's like they smooth things over.
Yeah, like a social lubricant.
Ooh, I like that.
Okay, so moving on, I was also struck by how the video, like the structure of it, is designed to help you learn.
Yeah. How so?
Well, first it shows the whole conversation like at normal speed, so you hear how it would sound naturally.
Okay.
But then it breaks it down and explains key phrases, which makes so much sense.
It does. It's how we learn language in real life.
Yeah, exactly. Like you get exposed to it, and then you get to focus on the details.
Makes sense.
And there's this section called the Fluency Builder,
Okay.
where they highlight phrases like, how's it going?
Which is, yeah,
So much more casual than, how are you?
way more natural.
Right. So it's like picking the right phrases to fit the tone.
Definitely.
And then for the actual name forgetting part,
Okay.
they have some pretty clever advice, like asking for a business card
Hard.
or like having the person write down their email,
That's so sneaky.
but also polite,
Yeah, you get the info you need without like...
humiliating anyone.
Right.
And then one of the hosts, I don't know if you noticed this, but he shares this story
Oh, yeah.
about forgetting his uncle's name at a family reunion.
Oh, no way.
Yeah. And it just shows like it happens to everyone.
I guess even language experts mess up sometimes.
Exactly. So have you ever been in a situation like that
Yeah.
where you just completely forgot someone's name?
Let me think. Oh, okay. Actually,
Yeah, tell me about it.
so I was at this party, right?
Okay.
And it was for this friend of mine, but I didn't know a lot of the people there.
Yeah, I hate that.
And this guy comes up to me and starts chatting. Really friendly guy.
Oh,
And I'm like racking my brain trying to remember his name, but it's just gone.
I've been there.
So what did I do?
What did you do?
I kind of just kept the conversation going, hoping something would jog my memory.
Risky.
I know, but luckily someone else came up and called him by his name.
Oh, thank goodness.
Right, Saved by the Bell.
So what do you think? Any takeaways for our listener from all this?
I think it's about staying calm, like even when you're panicking inside.
Yeah, and using the right phrases.
Exactly, and like we saw in the video, sounding natural is key.
Absolutely. So don't just memorize the phrases, practice them until they feel natural.
Couldn't agree more. Practice makes perfect, right?
Right.
So, thinking about all this, I wonder, do you think like different cultures would handle this whole name forgetting thing differently?
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, I mean, like in some cultures, it might be totally fine to just be direct and ask.
Right. But in others, it could be seen as super rude.
It makes you realize how much culture is tied up with language.
For sure. Like what's considered smooth in one place could be awkward in another.
Exactly. So it's not just about the words. It's about understanding the whole context.
Totally. Okay, so we've been talking about sounding natural, using euphemisms and stuff.
Yeah. What are some other things English learners can focus on for that, like natural flow?
Well, one thing is the rhythm of English, like the intonation where you put the stress.
Oh, yeah. That's what makes it sound, I don't know, musical.
Exactly. And that's why people love it, but it's also tricky to get right.
So it's like listening carefully to how native speakers do it.
Huh. Yeah, and then practicing, almost like learning an instrument.
Right. You got to train your ear.
Exactly.
And the video also talks about like actually using the phrases in real conversations.
Oh, for sure. You can't just memorize them.
Like language is meant to be spoken, right?
It's alive. You got to put it into practice.
And that's when the real learning happens, when you're actually interacting.
Totally. That's the fun part.
So we talked about this, but when you DO forget someone's name, they recommend asking for a business card.
Smooth move.
Or getting them to write their email so you can, like, discreetly get it.
It works especially well in professional settings.
Totally. But do you think it would work in more casual settings?
That's a good question.
Like asking for a business card at a party would be weird.
Yeah, but you could still use the same idea, right?
Like subtly getting the info.
Right, like, hey, how can I reach you? Or something like that.
So smooth.
You're steering the conversation without making it awkward.
Love it.
And it's all about sounding natural, even when you're freaking out inside.
Which is why they recommend those phrases, like in a bit of a hurry or slip our mind.
Yeah, those are lifesavers.
They make it seem less like a big deal.
Exactly, like you're just, smoothly moving things along.
Okay, so beyond just forgetting names, is there a bigger lesson here, do you think?
I think it's about fluency in general, like being able to express yourself no matter what.
Even when things get tricky.
Exactly, and that means more than just grammar and vocabulary.
Right, it's about being adaptable, thinking on your feet.
Yeah, like a linguistic gymnast.
I love that.
You got to be flexible, ready to improvise.
Which is a useful skill for life in general, not just language.
Totally agree.
Okay, so we talked about fluency, euphemisms, all that.
What about humor? They had that funny story about the uncle's name.
Yeah. Do you think humor can help in these situations?
I think it can, but you got to be careful.
Like a well-timed joke can lighten the mood.
Right, and show that you're, comfortable with yourself.
But you don't want to offend anyone.
It's definitely not. So read the room. Use your judgment.
So much good stuff in this deep dive, Rez.
It's amazing how much we can learn from just one video.
We've talked about so much. Cultural awareness, fluency, and even how language shapes our worldview.
Yeah, and we can't forget about practice.
Oh, absolutely. They make a big point about that in the video.
Like, you got to actually use the language.
But what if you don't have someone to practice with?
Good question. There are actually lots of ways to practice solo.
Oh, really? Like what?
Well, you could try listening to podcasts or audiobooks and shadowing the speaker.
Shadowing? What's that?
It's basically repeating what you hear, trying to match their pronunciation and everything.
Oh, interesting. So you're like having a conversation with the recording.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it helps you get used to the rhythm of the language.
Cool. What?
You could record yourself speaking and then listen back to it.
That's a good idea. You can hear your own mistakes.
Yeah, and see what you need to work on.
Like an instant feedback loop.
And then for writing, keeping a journal in English can be helpful.
Oh, yeah. Journaling is great for so many things.
It gets you thinking in English, and you can experiment without any pressure.
What about more formal writing, though?
You could try writing essays or articles, something that makes you think about structure and logic.
That makes sense.
And there are so many online resources to help you with grammar and stuff.
It's all about finding what works for you.
Yeah, make it enjoyable, not a chore.
So practice, 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 but make it fun.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
All right. So much covered already. Fluency, euphemisms, practice tips.
It's been a really great discussion.
I think our listeners will come away with a lot to think about.
For sure, especially about how much depth there is to English.
And before we go to the final part, I want to leave everyone with something to ponder.
Okay, shoot.
So we talked about how English has this musicality to it.
Right, the rhythm and flow.
Do you think that's true for all languages?
That's a really interesting question.
Like, does every language have its own kind of music?
And how does that affect how we experience different cultures?
Exactly. Something to think about.
Definitely. I'm going to be mulling that over for a while.
Well, that's it for this part of our deep dive.
Can't wait to see what comes up in the last part.
It's kind of mind-blowing when you think about it.
What is?
How language, it's not just about communicating.
Right.
It literally shapes how we see the world.
It's like each language gives you a different set of glasses.
Totally. And learning a new language, it's not just about words and grammar.
It's about understanding a whole new way of thinking.
Yeah, it's almost like expanding your mind.
Absolutely. And I think that's so important, especially these days with everyone so connected.
Right. Understanding different cultures, it helps us communicate better.
Breaks down barriers, builds bridges.
So before we wrap up this whole deep dive,
Okay.
I wanted to go back to the beginning,
To the name forgetting.
Yeah. We talked about strategies for conversations, but what about written communication?
Oh, interesting, like emails and stuff.
Exactly. How do you handle it when you're writing?
Well, the same principles apply, right?
Clarity, respect, all that.
But the phrases might be a little different.
So what would you do? Specific
I think honesty is always good. You could just say, I'm so sorry, but your name has slipped my mind. Would you remind me?
Yeah, just straight up admit it.
It shows you respect their time.
And you're not trying to be sneaky.
Exactly. Or you could try weaving it into a question,
Oh, like how?
Maybe, it was great meeting you at the conference. To make sure I have everything right, could you remind me of your last name?
That's so smooth. It doesn't feel awkward at all.
And it just seems like you're double checking.
And tone is important too, right? Even in writing.
Oh, definitely. You want to sound sincere.
Not like a robot.
So yeah, be mindful of your tone. Use clear language. And don't be afraid to get creative.
It's all about practice, just like with speaking.
The more you write, the easier it gets.
Wow, this deep dive has been amazing.
No, we've covered so much.
From awkward situations to cultural awareness.
And how language shapes our view of the world.
It's been a wild ride.
It really has.
I think our listeners are going to come away with a whole new perspective on English.
And a bunch of practical tips, too.
Definitely. So, until next time.
Happy Englishing, everyone.
And happy exploring.